The Canadian Agri-Food Policy Institute is driving bold policy solutions for a resilient Canadian agri-food system and building a stronger future for Canadian agriculture. Visit CAPI-ICPA.com to discover how.
It's time for RealAg Radio on Rural Radio Channel 147 on Sirius XM. RealAg Radio and RealAgriculture.com is your home for insight and analysis of the issues that are impacting your farm business. Let's get real and get connected with RealAg Radio. Welcome to RealAg Radio here on Rural Radio 147, Sirius XM. Shaun Haney, your host here on this Friday edition of the show. Thanks so much, everybody, for making RealAg Radio and Rural Radio 147 a big part of your workday. Also, of course, big shout out to everybody listening out there on the RealAg Radio podcast as well. Today's show is brought to you by CANTERRA Seeds. We're going to be giving shout outs to some of their loyal customers, some customers that have had real success with their CANTERRA CS 4100 LL. CANTERRA Seeds' new LibertyLink canola hybrid with true pod shatter tolerance. Make sure you go to talk to your local retailer about CANTERRA Seeds. And they have territory managers across the prairies. They just have fantastic products, not only in canola, but cereals and pulses as well. You can find out more by going to CANTERRA.com. Okay, today on the show, we are going to hear from Scott Peters, who's a Manitoba rep, and some of the things that he's been seeing in his territory and what they've been doing, and talk a little bit about 4100 as well. We're also going to have a RealAg Issues panel here today. We've got Kelvin Heppner, Lyndsey Smith, and Managing Director at CAPI, Tyler McCann. So we've got a whole bunch of stuff that has happened. We've got some infrastructure projects being announced, a really good column written by Daryl Franzu, farmer from Saskatchewan, also chair of the wheat growers, really talking about challenging Canada's culture of not moving fast enough and needing to think a little bit bigger from an agriculture perspective. We'll get the panel's thoughts on that. Obviously, also Pierre Poilievre has some challenges. He's trying to keep his caucus together. We got a budget to pass. There's a lot. Agritechnica is going on this week. There is a lot happening really across the world of agriculture. We're going to try to bring as much of our thoughts and insights on all of it to you here today. If you have any feedback on today's show, we'd love to hear from you. Send me an email, shaney@realagriculture.com. You can also call the RealAg feedback line, 855-776-6147. It's kind of unique broadcasting today. I broadcast in a lot of different spots, right? I'm always on the go. So with my truck, or maybe it's in an airport lounge, or it's been a Starbucks in New Orleans, Louisiana. It was one of the oddest experiences ever. Today I'm broadcasting from the Fairmont in Ottawa. And I'm speaking at a conference here, a bioenergy conference, about the potential for biofuels for agriculture and creating demand for agricultural commodities like canola and, of course, ethanol production with corn and wheat. But I'm using the hospitality suite, which is the Prime Minister's suite at the Fairmont, which is very, very cool. And no, Mark Carney is not here. He is not here. But maybe he'll show up. Who knows? Somebody told me he's in British Columbia today, which is kind of a bit of a disappointment because it's pretty cool. There's pictures all along the wall. It's pretty awesome. Okay, let's take a break. When we come back, we got Scott Peters from CANTERRA Seeds, our show sponsor, up right after
this. Smith. Joining me now, Clint Yerke, Regional Technical Services Manager with BASF. Today's topic is clubroot. Using these resistant hybrids, how can we keep them effective as long as possible?
Anything that we can do to reduce the spore load, so resistance, rotations, patch management, that's going to be a great tool when the disease is already established in your field. But you also want to prevent it from arriving in the field. And so that's where sanitation and minimum till, zero till operations are essential for managing the disease. We have 12 or so different hybrids that are available that range in different types of maturity, different disease like packages, but they all do possess great pod shatter, pod drop resistance, lodging, harvestability, ease, and couple that with high-end yields. So you get that full package of those InVigor genetics that's going to give you a much better opportunity for improved profitability at the end of the season.
Do you want to find out more about the InVigor hybrid canola lineup? Go to invigorresults.ca. I get to spend every day talking to farmers in the ag industry through RealAgriculture.com and RealAg Radio. But nothing is more fun than speaking to an audience live and in person. If you're planning an ag event, book a Real Agriculture speaker to make it a successful and memorable experience. Email shaney@realagriculture.com and you can book myself or any other Real Ag personality to speak at your event. Bring your audience all the fun, insight, and energy of Real Agriculture. And welcome back to RealAg Radio. It's now time for our product spotlight with CANTERRA Seeds, and I'm pleased to be joined right now by Scott Peters, who's a territory manager for Western Manitoba and Southeastern Saskatchewan. Hey, Scott, it's great to chat with you again.
Hey, thanks for having me back.
Okay, Scott, we're going to dig into some of the great things that are happening here at CANTERRA Seeds, specifically around CS 4100 LL. You've had a big year with your canola lineup, and CS 4100 LL seems to be getting a lot of attention out there in farm country. What's been standing out about that hybrid in particular?
I think guys needed to see it perform in the field this year. I got to see it in trials all year last year, so I was super confident in the pod shatter genetics in it. But that was the big feedback I'm getting so far. It's exceeded expectations on the pod shatter. And then on yield, that was the consistency that we needed to see this fall. It was really, really strong. And the feedback's been pretty consistent.
That's awesome. Okay, so I talked to one of your customers, Daniel Rook, and I talked to him about how he's been growing CANTERRA Seeds hybrids for a number of years now. And he actually had CS 4100 LL in the ground this past season. Here's what he had to say.
I guess we've been consistently using CANTERRA now, and it's in our bolio. And again, harvested all of our canola this year, and it's been a solid performer. I don't know, they've been very attentive. Had a really good working relationship with them, intend to grow CANTERRA in the rotation again next year.
Scott, it seems like once farmers give CANTERRA Seeds a try, and he talked about some of those other value-added things that CANTERRA Seeds does with its customers, they tend to be loyal. They tend to stay with you, and not just because of the performance, but because of the people behind it, like yourself and others. When you hear what kind of that kind of confidence from farmers, how does it make you feel?
That's validating for sure. I mean, first and foremost, the product needs to speak for itself, and he kind of talked about that. But, we're all the territory managers. We're trying to build trust and repeat business with guys. You build trust in the product first, and then, you're in the field, you're doing meal in the field, scouting. You're just trying to build that trust in yourself as well, or build the trust in that farmer in you along the way, I guess.
Yeah, one thing I've noticed through a number of different conversations that we've had, Scott, you talk a lot about the trust and connection your team builds with the farmer customer, really trying to, there's obviously the intention is to try to, sell the hybrids into the marketplace. But there's also, trying to provide that farmer with a win at the end of the day, a better ROI, the farmer increasing farm profitability through good hybrid selection. So as you look ahead, what do you think truly sets CANTERRA Seeds apart from some of the competition? And how do you keep earning that trust year after year?
It's a good point. I mean, there's a lot of good companies out there, right? And we're just trying to differentiate ourselves, give out a good product. But then, you're in the field, walking the fields with guys, scouting with them. Trying to bring extra value and some more knowledge to the guys. That's kind of the key to just building trust year over year.
Yeah, you made me, I heard, I was in a workshop one time and I heard the presenter talk about how in today's environment, sales is not being across the table from the customer. It's being on the same side of the table. And as you describe, walking through the fields, trying to solve issues, make sure we're taking advantage of opportunities. That's a big part of the process for sure.
Yeah. I mean, sales nowadays isn't just a transaction anymore, like you say. You're not texting out pricing. You're not, if you want to build trust and repeat business, you got to be side by side with the growers, and a lot of the time you end up friends with them, right?
Is there any CS 4100 LL left for the 26th season, or is it all gone?
There's a really good supply of the 4100. We did come out with a brand new 4200 as well, a little less supply on it, but the 4100 it's selling strong, but we got strong supply as well.
Great stuff. If somebody wants more information on the 4100 or the 4200, where do they go?
Well, first off, you can go to CANTERRA.com. There's all the territory managers are on the website, all of our contact information, emails. And I mean, you can also find a list of all the retailers that deal our products as well. You can contact them, you can contact the reps directly.
Yeah, great idea. Walk into your local retailer and say, hey, I want to hear about CANTERRA CS 4100 LL. That's a great way to start off that conversation with your local retailer. Hey, Scott, thanks so much for joining us here today. Really appreciate it.
All right, thanks for the time.
We'll be back with more of RealAg Radio and the RealAg Issues Panel right after this.
Getting your pulses off to a strong start just got easier. Tag Team Bionic from FMC is the all-in-one granular inoculant that's simple to handle and easy to apply at seeding. With improved flow and less dust, it runs clean through your equipment and delivers consistent results in the field. Powered by 4 biological actives plus LCO promoter technology, it kickstarts nodulation and nutrient uptake, even in cool soils. Ask your retailer about Tag Team Bionic today.
RealAg Radio is Canada's only daily radio show focused on agriculture. Get expert advice on Agronomic Monday. Tuesdays and Wednesdays will cover a broad range of issues. Thursday we'll hear from farmers across the country on the Farmer Rapid Fire. And we'll wrap things up Fridays with the RealAg Issues Panel with Kelvin Heppner and Lyndsey Smith. Join us Monday through Friday at 4:30 Eastern. And don't forget about the replay at 7 in the morning on Rural Radio 147, Sirius XM.
If you're involved in the agriculture industry, it's important to stay informed on all the latest issues affecting your business. At RealAgriculture.com, we offer fast, reliable news, information, and insights to help you keep on top of all of the latest in Canadian agriculture. Visit RealAgriculture.com and sign up for our free daily newsletter covering everything from news, agronomy, animal agriculture, and much more. Visit RealAgriculture.com/subscribe today.
Welcome back to RealAg Radio here on Rural Radio 147, Sirius XM. Let's get to our RealAg Issues Panel. Of course, today's show is brought to you by CANTERRA Seeds. And we just heard from Daniel Rook, who is in Alexander, Manitoba. He's proudly been growing CS 4100 LL, CANTERRA Seeds' new Liberty Link canola hybrid with true pod shatter tolerance. Big shout out to Daniel Rook, a loyal CANTERRA customer. Okay, let's get to the RealAg Issues Panel. Up first, we've got Lyndsey Smith. Lyndsey, I'm in your city.
You are, and in a very fancy part, apparently, of my city, but we will not see each other. You are here for about 22 minutes, and then you turn around and leave.
Yeah, it's sort of like in like Star Trek, where they beam down to the planet, and they were only there for a short period of time. That's how I am in the nation's capital.
That's right. Yeah, they would beam between, like, planets. But, like, cool. Yeah, it's basically the same.
Yeah, like my starship is an Air Canada flight.
It's still Air Canada. So
yeah, not the same as the Star Trek Enterprise. But I also don't have a bunch of people with me with different colored shirts knowing who is going to die on the planet.
That's right. Yeah.
There was that, too. There was that signal. But Kelvin Heppner, coming out of Altona, Manitoba. How are we doing today, Kelvin?
I'm just confused. I have no idea what you're talking about, but I'm doing well and looking forward to holding down the Western perspective today.
Good call.
Yeah, we are kind of grouped here today. Very close to Ottawa.
Kind of lonely out west here.
Yeah. Listen, I was there. I was in the West yesterday. I'll be back tonight. Don't worry, Kelvin. We had a fantastic time yesterday at the Cypress County Ag Connect conference. It was fantastic. It was a lot of fun. And got a jet plane and ended up in Ottawa this morning. Also joining us is Tyler McCann. He is the managing director at CAPI. How are we doing today, Tyler?
Well, I'm the one wearing the red shirt, Shaun. So I'm feeling like if somebody's going to get shot on today's show, it's going to be me. So that's more of that Star Trek reference for Kelvin.
Yeah. Kelvin would not remember some, like what when you think Star Trek, Kelvin, which generation would you think of? Like, are you a Voyager? Probably Voyager or something like that?
I don't know. I know they made a remake a few years ago, but that's about as much as I know.
Okay.
I don't know what you're referring to with generations.
If we were to do, like, Lyndsey, if we were to do like a blind audience question, pick the panel member most unlikely to know Star Trek references. I don't think anyone would pick Kelvin.
And yet here we are.
And here,
yes. It's because he's 19 and a half, maybe, and perpetually so. And so, yeah, he just doesn't have, like, us oldies.
Us oldies.
Us too. Tyler also fits into the young camp, so there you go.
Well, we had a big week this week in the world of agriculture and what's going on across North America when it comes to ag-related issues. I guess let's start off with one of the most recent ones, which is the fact the Prime Minister made some announcements regarding these nation-building projects. I think this is the second tranche. Kelvin, what's the take here? What I've seen from a lot of the mainstream is these projects are all kind of underway. This is not new stuff.
Yeah, that is one of the takeaways. There's this second tranche is a bunch of projects mainly focused on mining and also on electricity transmission lines, that type of thing, and a lot of focus on Ontario, Quebec, and BC. There's also a project up in Nunavut when it comes to the power side of things. So, like you said, they're all in progress. Some of them have been delayed for a long time, though, and are needing money. And so that's one of the things that this looks like this is turning into not just about clearing regulations and the approvals that are needed, but it looks like this is turning into government's going to help fund these projects, or at least enable funding where investors feel government has this project prioritized and that they feel safe putting their private investment into it. In some cases, it will be through the Canada Infrastructure Bank, as we saw in the budget last week, increased funding for the Infrastructure Bank to fund or unlock capital to these types of projects. So there is a noticeable absence, though, bringing my Western perspective off the top of the show here right away. The Prairie provinces have no projects listed on this list. And so, of course, any pipeline capacity out of Alberta, not mentioned here. Of course, the federal government is apparently still negotiating with the Alberta government on a memorandum of understanding regarding something along those lines. But the Prairies left off this list.
It was very much flyover country when it came. I saw a lot of people making the maps, and there was like pins on where the projects were, and then there was like this gaping hole in the middle. It was like Ellen Bester's 5-hole. That's a reference you'll get, Kelvin, for sure.
I get that one, yeah.
Tyler, what do you make of the fact that not a lot of prairie in this infrastructure announcement?
Well, so let's remember that there were projects from the West on the first round of projects that were announced. So I don't think that you should be looking at this at any particular list, but at kind of the total sense of projects that are there. I think the Premier of Alberta has been pretty clear that she understands some of the dynamics around that pipeline. They're working to try and get a project. You can't have a pipeline as a major national project when there is no pipeline project to make a national project, and that does seem to be the holdup, is that we don't have a project yet to put into the process. I think that there's this bigger issue around the difference between kind of selecting these projects and blessing particular projects and saying we want to make Canada a better place to do all projects. I think that is kind of the big problem with the approach of the federal government today, is that they are kind of doing this as a one-off rather than fixing the regulatory issues. I think their argument is kind of this is the fast way while we spend more time to fix the broader set of regulatory problems that are there. But ultimately, this is, I think, kind of, it's progress. It's not a lot of progress. I think it is gets to be maybe the bare minimum progress that the Prime Minister needs to show. But there is an issue around kind of the difference between the rhetoric that they continue to use that talks about these big nation-building projects and the reality that, yes, they are making it a little bit easier to do business in Canada. They are making it a little bit easier to do big projects in Canada, but it doesn't look like it's going to change the world yet.
Well, one thing that I actually thought that maybe based on how we heard the Prime Minister respond to that, I think, where was he, where he was doing the panel, and they asked him about pipelines. He's like, I'm so bored. Like, based on that response, I actually thought that maybe that was sort of a signal that we would potentially have some sort of pipeline news in the announcement, Lyndsey, but that obviously didn't come to bear.
That's right. And I mean, I think that there's a couple ways to look at this, and sometimes what's not being said, I think, does sort of indicate realistically this would have been a pretty easy thing for Alberta and Danielle Smith to come out guns blazing if there wasn't something sort of going on in the background here potentially that is continuing those conversations. And that's the indication that we have, is that there's still, something along those lines happening or going forward. To Tyler's point, though, there has to be sort of a project to actually put into this project's office. So my guess is that is in the works. I think looking at, the maps and what these projects are, I think one of the criticisms we have in agriculture of a lot of our infrastructure is that we don't have necessarily sort of that outside in. We don't have our port infrastructure. We don't have, right? We have a lot of things in that gap in the prairies that need to get out. I don't know that this list necessarily addresses that per se. At the same time, it does feel to me, and this is perhaps me wearing my hopeful hat, is that it does feel like, and I think Prime Minister Carney is relatively logical. And it does feel to me like this is sort of laying the groundwork of some things that eventually become bigger things. That could also be entirely not true. Okay, so I am being hopeful that perhaps as these nation building projects get announced, or that we are laying the groundwork for exactly that, inviting investment into Canada. That was certainly, there's parts of the budget that, that's the long-term goal, that's what will happen. So that's sort of where I'm thinking. At the same time, I will just, not surprising to anyone, it is true that we have not seen anything, solidly in the agriculture focus as of yet, and that is a bit disappointing.
Yeah. Can I just jump on that, Shaun?
Of course.
No Port of Vancouver. Of course, infrastructure for Port of Vancouver is something, or related to the West Coast capacity, is something that the grain industry has been calling for. That's notably missing. Also, there's a budget to pass next week, and so I think in many ways the Carney government chose a very non-controversial list here, not using a lot of political capital, not wanting to forfeit perhaps Elizabeth May's Green Party vote in terms of the budget in announcing something along the lines of a pipeline. And finally, this whole major projects office initiative, it's a massive PR stakeholder management exercise as well. Here you get to dribble out these carrots over months, and you get all the premiers and all these stakeholders coming to the government. Hey, can we get on this list? Can we get on this list? And you get to hand out these carrots, and you kind of keep the peace in the meantime on a number of fronts. And so I think the government, it's starting to look more like a PR stakeholder management exercise than what maybe that's a cynical perspective, but what the optimists were hoping that this would bring in terms of building a national economy.
Tyler, you disagree with Kelvin?
I disagree with Kelvin. I think that there's this context that we often miss, where what the new government's trying to do, what Canada needs to do, is to steer the Titanic, right? We have a government, a bureaucracy, a system that has effectively discouraged private sector investment in Canada for a decade. There is a culture that exists in Ottawa, within regulators, within the investment community outside of Ottawa, that Canada is not a good place to do business. This is not something that you just change overnight. This is not something that you can just wave a wand to do. This is hard work. And so I think that we need to manage our own expectations around how quickly all of this can change. And I also think that we need to not look at this just in the context of the major projects office. We've had a budget that, again, is part of that steering of the Titanic. I think if you look at that focus away from spending money on social programs to investing money in projects and trying to make it easier to secure that private sector investment, this is all part of this effort to try and fix what's been broken in Canada for a long time. And so I don't think that this is just a stakeholder management. I think that that's a very cynical way to look at this. I think that this is an example of something that is a lot easier said than done. The government is trying to make that pivot, but there is a big change that needs to happen.
I hate to put labels on.
I like it when I'm on the side of the spectrum calling for government to be more bold, and Tyler is saying the government is doing enough.
I'm not saying the government's doing enough. I'm not saying the government's doing enough. Let me be clear. I think that they need to change the whole regulatory framework to make it easier for all projects. I just think that it's important not to underestimate the task of changing bureaucracy and culture and laws in this country to make it an easier place to do business.
Okay, so we got Kelvin the cynic, Lyndsey with rose-colored glasses, and
Absolutely.
Tyler's an apologist.
No, I'm a realist. Realist, Shaun.
It's okay. So hold on. We have two tranches. I'm kind of on Kelvin's side here because we have two tranches. The bulk of the projects that have been announced already in motion were again, this speaks to the lack of action. They could have announced these projects that they did yesterday when they did the first tranche, but they're dribbling them out. Get moving.
Because they said they would have stuff by Grey Cup, which is Sunday, so they had to save some, Shaun, so that they'd have some.
No, again, I think that you're all being too cynical on this. I'll go back to Kelvin's comment about the Port of Vancouver. Kelvin, what project did people want to put forward to the Major Projects Office? There's been a Port of Vancouver project put forward. That's the new container terminal. That's not a terminal. That's not a project. When the grain growers talk about we want a Port of Vancouver project in the office, they don't mean the new container terminal, right? And so this is where I think that there's this reality to the things that we want, these dreams that we have, and where are the concrete projects that you can make a difference with? Again, the budget invested put forward $5 billion for a trade infrastructure fund. That's going to drive some of those projects forward. That is probably a lot more important from a financing perspective than the Major Projects Offices from a regulatory perspective on some of those issues.
Can I just, I'd love to hop in here because Kelvin mentioned it, and we've had some groups that have mentioned really we need to be focusing on actual traffic out of the Port of Vancouver, right? So bridges, all these sorts of things. I guess my question would be, we have to back this up a step to who is it that puts that project forward, right? So to me, there is a certain level of organization and actually getting the groups together, actually getting the proponents together that actually are the ones that are in decision-making areas to actually make some of these things happen. And I think that is one of the hurdles that we have for some of these. If you look at this list, there are things like a mine or a dam or whatever. So it's you can have one or two proponents that are we are in a decision-making position, we can make that happen. Something like rebuilding the road, rail, bridge infrastructure around the Port of Vancouver, that is who gets to make that call? It's not the mayor, for crying out loud, right? It's going to be the Port Authority is the Port Authority.
Port Authority.
Yeah, exactly.
I believe in the Montreal Container Project, I believe the Montreal Port Authority is involved.
Yep.
So the Vancouver Port Authority could, or CN Rail or CPKC.
But it's probably all of those, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. We have to take a break.
We got to take a break. I got to cut in here. Today's show is brought to you by CANTERRA Seeds. I want to recognize Derek Derry from Saskatoon, Saskatchewan. He is proudly growing CS 4100 LL, CANTERRA Seeds' new Liberty Link canola hybrid with true pod shatter tolerance. We're back on RealAg Radio, the RealAg Issues Panel, right now.
Infuse some energy into your next corporate event, customer meeting, or conference with RealAg Radio, Canada's national agriculture radio show. Create a unique experience at your next event with host Shaun Haney, broadcasting RealAg Radio live on SiriusXM, featuring exciting guests, captivating interviews, and the latest news from the agriculture community. Contact advertising at realagriculture.com or call 587-787-1795 to book your on location with RealAg Radio today.
Peter Johnson at WheatPete, RealAgriculture.com. I'm the host of The Word, and I love doing The Word. I love the questions. I love the challenges. I love having to apply agronomics to all over the globe and areas outside of my normal jurisdiction. Also, I love the feedback the most, where growers challenge me, tell me about their plot results, help me to learn. The Word, absolutely the best part of my day.
And welcome back to RealAg Radio here on Rural Radio 147. Today's show brought to you by CANTERRA Seeds. Want to recognize Dave and Dustin Dyke, who are in Grenfell, Saskatchewan. They've been growing CS 4100 LL, CANTERRA Seeds' new Liberty Link canola hybrid with true pod shatter tolerance. A lot of these people have been recognizing today not only CANTERRA Seeds customers, but also audience members for Real Agriculture. So it's great to give some people some shout-outs today and recognize them for what they do for agriculture. Okay, let's continue. We got Tyler McCann, Managing Director at CAPI. We got Kelvin Heppner and Lyndsey Smith of Real Agriculture. Lyndsey, once in a while we do, and we try to do it actually probably more often than in the past. We try to get opinion columns from people outside of our group. It's always great to have different perspectives. And Daryl Franzu, who is the chair at the Wheat Growers, he's been kind of in the writing mood as of late. Who knew Daryl was such a scribe? And his most recent column has really got a lot of traffic. And so I guess set the stage for us and we'll get the panel to react.
Right. So, as you mentioned, so Daryl's been submitting some columns. This is the shout out, everyone, to every once in a while we've got room for an op-ed, we'll run it. And this particular one, called Comfort Over Courage, the cost of playing it safe in agriculture, really seems to resonate with the audience. We've got lots of shares on social, lots of feedback on it already. And to Daryl's credit, I think what he's put to, pen to paper, he's really actually identified what many of us are feeling, or at least, or are observing, and maybe haven't been able to say as eloquently as this. I think it's an incredibly well-written column as far as identifying where we sort of hit a brick wall on actually moving things forward in this industry. And when you read through it, there's a lot of things I think that we've talked about on this issues panel many times. He's got things like, if we're not careful, Canada will lose its agriculture edge, because we stop competing, confusing governance with leadership. That's one that really gets us sometimes. And I would say, from my perspective, we have these conversations quite often, even within our own household, about, the pace of change, adoption of new tech or new practices, and just realistically at times, especially, spending time in Ottawa, you go to some of these events, you talk to some people, and you're having the same conversations about the same issues over and over and over, as if we can't get past some of them. But it just seems like we can't for whatever reason. And it's not any one thing, but when we add these all up, and we talk about culture on this show as well, when you add them all up collectively, we just seem very slow and kind of stuck.
Yeah. Daryl mentions the Canadian cultural issue of being risk adverse. That's a factor here as well that lends itself to moving at a slower pace than some would like. Kelvin, I guess, how would are you right on side with Daryl, or do you think there is reason for maybe the slower, cautious approach to get it right the first time? What are your thoughts?
Well, I think there are reasons, but not sure that they're great reasons. And I think we far too often underestimate the risk of inaction, of standing still, of not taking risks. And again, this ties in with our discussion last session or last segment about federal government's lack of boldness and lack of willingness to spend political capital, and that's what leadership is, and that's what Daryl's calling for here: courage, and that's something that, again, maybe it's a cultural issue. I'm not sure it is completely cultural, but and that will take time to change, I guess, as Tyler talked about, but. Boldness, courage, it's certainly a theme that we continue to see on many fronts, including in Canadian agriculture.
So, Tyler, from your perspective, what would it take? What are the ingredients for, if this is true, that Canada moves too slow? And I'm on side with Daryl on a number of different files and fronts. What are the ingredients to break through that and change that pace of which we pursue change from an agriculture perspective?
And again, I think that there's an important premise. I mean, we talked about the challenge with the culture inside government in the last segment, but I think now we're talking about the challenge of the culture inside the industry and inside the associations and inside that landscape that have fallen into this trap of a lack of courage, this governance instead of leadership. Again, I think that this was a really good column, and if people haven't read it, they really should take the time to read it. I think that there is this starting point. I've spent a lot of time thinking about how do we overcome this? How do we figure it? How to encourage more of that collaboration and that leadership? And I've kind of come to this really simple realization that you just need to do it, right? You just actually need to collaborate. You actually just need to work together. You actually just need to be prepared to look beyond how things are today. And I think that there's going to be this really interesting space as the budget rolls out, because the budget has said the government's going to change its role from a science perspective. We don't know that means plant breeding, but that may mean changes in plant breeding. But one of the reasons why we haven't got there today is because of the past experience around the right of use agreement. I think the federal government still wears the scars from that, the inability of the industry itself to come and say, look, we know that the way things work today isn't going to be able to work forever. So here's kind of our sense of where things could go. That is going to be, I think, this really good test case of, is there a possibility that industry can show leadership? And I think that there is this sense that there is always going to be winners and losers when change happens. It is really hard to find win-win-win solutions. But there are solutions that work better for everybody when they're proactive and when they're developed in a more thoughtful way. But it does mean looking beyond maintenance, right? I think that's, again, one of the contrasts that Daryl puts forward in the piece. And I think that we need to stop just trying to maintain the status quo, but you'd fix it by just doing it. I mean, I'm sure we've all heard some of the reaction to this column. I'm sure we've all had these conversations with stakeholders across from the sector, from farmers to companies to association and organization staff. Everybody knows it's a problem. You just need to actually do something about it, and that seems to be the simple thing that's really hard to do.
Well,
Sorry.
I was just going to say, how is that any different than healthcare reform? It's like
Potentially
the exact same parallel. People know it needs to be improved. They know it needs to be fixed. They know it's not doing what it's supposed to be doing. But
until enough people can see the threat, though, the risk
right.
on the horizon, action doesn't happen. And you need somebody to convince people that there's a risk to inaction.
Yeah.
And I think that there's a huge difference between. So do we think that farm industry leadership is the same as bureaucracy across the country? That's the equation that you're making, Shaun, right? The reason why we can't change healthcare is because it's a political bureaucratic issue. Are we equating kind of leaders in the farm sector with bureaucrats and provincial capitals across the country? Is that, do we really think it's that bad? And I think it might be that bad. And I think that again, Daryl's trying to call this out, that we do really have this issue. And I think it's often easy for us to point fingers at the federal government when they don't change. I think that the sector needs to acknowledge that it's got these same issues that are standing in the way of reform and doing things differently.
So, and I'll put on my my communicator hat, as I usually do. To me, that's where the leadership component comes in, and we're looking for it in our federal government, and we looked for it in this budget and we didn't get it, is that bold leadership of, as someone, you have to create a compelling vision for your board, for your producer group, whatever it is. You have to first bring that and say, here's what's wrong. Here's my idea how to fix it. Maybe it's the right idea. Maybe it's the wrong idea. But I feel like we don't bring forward and speak openly enough about big ideas or what we want to do, and then create that compelling vision and move it forward. It probably happens at a small scale or an individual scale or behind closed doors, but I don't feel like we have this. I don't feel like we're rewarded necessarily for bringing forward bold ideas. Everyone likes to put up barriers as opposed to think, yeah, that is a good idea. Let's do it. That's what. And to me, that's where the rubber hits the road, right? That's where we actually move things forward.
Yeah, very, very fair. And I don't think that we should. I think it's too easy to blame bureaucrats. I think it's really easy to say, farm groups aren't providing the leadership. It's also regular farmer stakeholders as well are very much a part of some of the lack of change as well. Where there is examples, maybe not rolled out well, but where there was a bold step taken. And I'm not saying I support responsible grain and that idea. I'm just saying there's an example. So park your emails. The farm groups rolled that out in response to what they think should happen, and look how that worked out. There was
they got their hands slapped.
Massive uprising, which creates a further level of cautiousness.
Exactly.
In order, we're not doing that again.
It might take a decade to overcome the people that showed boldness in putting that out. Yeah.
Yeah. And that I think the hardest part in all of this is that ultimately it's easier to blame a faceless bureaucracy than it is to take personal responsibility and say, okay, so if I'm at my producer group and somebody comes up with this idea, Do I entertain it without supporting it? Or do I shut it down immediately? Right? Like, and unfortunately, it's the individual stuff that's the hardest part to actually change.
And one of the other parts about this that also creates a bit of a resistance to change in the country is that I'm not sure Canadians like to be told that things are not going well. And I think, part of Poilievre's message, not communicated well, this idea, he followed the rhetoric of Canada's broken. Probably went too far on that and should have rephrased that and said, like, we've got real challenges. There's other ways to paraphrase that and get your point across. Canadians weren't very receptive to that negative, like, we need to fix this sort of conversation. They push back on it. I hear from some of the audience, when I get on my soapbox and start ranting about this stuff, I get pushback where people are like, you don't seem to like it here very much. That's not what I said. I just said we need to improve. We need to get better. There's opportunities. We've got to be competitive in the global landscape. We just can't be so, there's maybe a little bit too like internal looking. Is that navel gazing? Is that what we call that?
Yes, navel gazing.
But I think, Shaun, there's also, I think often we live in the glow of the past. We've been doing quite a bit of work on innovation these days. And you ask people, what was the kind of last big innovation in Canadian agriculture? And some people will say canola. You know what? 70s. That wasn't yesterday.
Well, I think it depends
on how
Tyler. I think it, yeah. Well,
yes.
Some would say maybe zero till, but to be fair,
also 30 years ago, Shaun.
But
there come up a couple of decades.
There has been a lot of innovation in Canada in between that and now.
Right.
That's the flagship of what people think of. That's not necessarily inaccurate. What's the last one?
Right. And I'm not saying when was the last innovation. I'm saying the last big one. We can be comfortable with this ongoing incrementalism. And this ongoing, let's just kind of tweak things. Let's just kind of putter along, right? Because we do innovate and we do grow and we do change. But the question is, at what point in time do you need to make a leap forward, right? And it has been a long time since Canadian agriculture made a leap forward. When the rest of the world is leaping forward kind of all of the time, that pace of leaping forward in the rest of the world is happening faster and more aggressively than it is here in Canada.
Well, I know we have to go.
We do.
Sorry.
So go ahead.
Yeah, I know we have to take a break, but I want to share a very and I know everyone's sick and tired of hearing me talk about solar grazing, but this is a very real example that exactly exemplifies what Tyler's talking about. 8 years ago, Canada, and myself included, were leaders on the solar grazing file. Okay, leaders. Hardly anyone was doing it. We had full opportunity to do it. Do you know who the leaders are now? Europe, if you can believe it, and the US are leaps and bounds ahead of where we are because nobody wants to actually put the work in to capitalize on an opportunity and do something with it. And our organizations cannot organize. They cannot work together and they cannot hustle. And we are being left behind. Case in point.
Speaking of lamb, I'm speaking tomorrow at the Alberta Lamb Producers AGM.
I'm so jealous.
I'm hanging out with your lamb peeps.
I know.
Tomorrow.
You have the best schedule, except for the travel part and being all over Canada.
Yeah. I was in Medicine Hat yesterday, Ottawa today, and back to Lethbridge tomorrow.
Anyway, shout out to the lamb peeps.
Yeah, we were joking during the commercial break. Sales Shaun needs to have his head checked because content Shaun's a little tired at the end of the week. Hey, we'll be back with more of RealAg Radio, the RealAg Issues Panel right after this. Brought to you today by CANTERRA. Built on over 100 years of seed innovation and unwavering commitment to farmers, Pioneer 100 Series canola hybrids deliver a step change in yield performance and agronomic traits. This isn't just better canola, it's different canola. Pioneer 100 Series. Contact your local Pioneer sales representative or visit pioneer.com/100 series to learn more today.
I'm Lyndsey Smith, host of The Agronomist, and I want to thank you for tuning in for over 200 episodes of our beloved little program. Join me Monday nights, 8 p.m. Eastern on YouTube for our live and interactive agronomy Q&A. Each week, our guest panel will handle some of your toughest agronomic questions live, streaming on YouTube, Facebook, X, and RealAgriculture.com. Tune in Monday nights or go to RealAgriculture.com/agronomist and sign up for our email notifications and don't miss an episode.
And welcome back to RealAg Radio. I want to give a shout out to Brian Kester from Three Hills, Alberta, who's been growing CANTERRA hybrids since 2018. And this last year, he grew CS 4100 LL, CANTERRA Seeds' new Liberty Link canola hybrid with true pod shatter tolerance. Okay, what's been going on this week is Agritechnica. And Kelvin, we had some real fun earlier this week. We did the walk around with Rob Syke, who I think Rob had more fun than we did in the audience because he loves that kind of stuff. He even did some bringing in some RealAg fans to say, "Hey, it's Shaun Haney." It was a lot of fun live from the Agritechnica floor. It seems like a little bit dialed back this year, though, from an announcement standpoint.
Yeah, I think a lot of companies have made incremental changes. There's some different paint jobs and that type of thing. But yeah, maybe not the big announcements or leap forward in terms of prototypes or concepts that we've seen over the last number of years, more of an improvement type focused show. At the same time, I've been texting with some farmers from Western Canada that are in Germany this week, and one prevailing comment is everybody's got a robot. So companies are showing that they are trying to compete in terms of driving forward in automation and that type of thing. The question is whether those robots are actually functional or how close they are to actually being usable in the real world. Not sure that many are quite there yet. The next that, I guess, would be one example that we already see in North America in terms of a large robot model. There's a lot of companies that have smaller ones at Agritechnica this week. Also interest, of course, in electric power or hybrid engines, diesel over electric, that type of thing. Zoomline, the Chinese company, has made a bit of a splash with a hybrid combine, full-size combine on display at Agritechnica, and as well as some tractors, one of which they say can, if you push the electric boost button, gets up to 1,200 horsepower on top of the diesel power. And so that's, or when you combine the diesel and electric, so that type of thing getting some attention. And it's something I think, I wonder, certainly a lot of ag manufacturers already have manufacturing presence in China, but I do wonder whether we see some of what's happening in the global auto sector on the ag machinery side of things down the road as Chinese manufacturing advances. But yeah, I'd say general, it looks like a great show, huge turnout, huge numbers again.
Oh, so much fun.
Maybe not the big advances, leap forward in terms of technology that we've seen at some other shows, and that's likely reflecting the state of the overall machinery economy right now.
As I've said many times, the German food palette is very narrow, but they do it. The food in Germany is outstanding. They know how to do it right.
So long as you
highlighted the show.
Yeah, pork and potatoes and berries. Well, and then you are set.
And who doesn't? And you forgot about the beer. You forgot about the beer.
Yeah, you're right.
That button you talked about, that energy boost button, that reminds me like in Spaceballs when they have to flip the thing, hit the button, and it goes to ludicrous speed. That's what that is.
I don't actually know if there's a button, but when you combine the electric with the diesel, that's where they can. There's a turbo up to 1,200.
If there isn't a button, they should make one. We should let them know.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. It should be one of those nitro buttons where you flip up the thing and then you toggle the switch.
You have to have a key.
Yeah. Oh, 2 keys. And you have to turn them at the same time. Okay.
Shaun, I'm trying to figure out if Kelvin got the Spaceballs reference, but not the Star Trek reference from the beginning of the show.
I feel like that's probably
I'm more likely
accurate.
to get a Spaceballs reference than a Star Trek one, yeah.
Such a good movie. I don't care what anybody says, and I can't wait for Spaceballs 2.
Is there anyone who doesn't like Spaceballs? Please get in touch with us. Anyway.
There would be some jokes in there that some people would be like, "Oh, that doesn't hold up. That doesn't, that's not a 2025 joke."
What year did that movie? What year did they?
Oh, who knows? We have to Google it.
It would be probably disappointing to us how many people are too young to have seen it.
Okay, well, that's your homework, everybody.
Okay,
you need to watch Spaceballs. This
it's a Canadian classic.
Mm-hmm. And honestly, it's great to see, again, all the Canadian manufacturers, especially at a time where there's lots of talk about, Canada needs to diversify its trade. And what a great show from an agricultural context to showcase some of that Canadian innovation and technology. And there's a hunger for it, as Rob and I talked about. And the STEP organization and the work that they do to bring some of those groups over. And really Saskatchewan and Manitoba are the two provinces that really, really make a foothold there.
Well, and some of that has to do with geographic similarities with farming in Eastern Europe.
Absolutely, yeah.
Is relevant. But also universities have gotten on board this year as well too. I've seen Olds College kids, University of Saskatchewan kids are at the show too. So quite the experience that some universities are giving to some of their ag students.
People walk around in the rider jerseys. Tyler, go ahead.
I don't think that we appreciate kind of the role of the ag equipment manufacturing sector in Canada, and I think as we go back to kind of the budget what the federal government is trying to do around investment, that is a space where I think we should be working hard to try and secure more investment, try and get more of those private companies investing in those Canadian businesses in Western Canada in particular, and so the more that we can do to kind of shine a light on that and create some more conditions for them to spend more money, but they're not having an easy time of it, and again, it will be interesting to see how much of that opportunity in Europe can offset some of the challenges that they're having south of the border.
No, that's the hard part. And you think about Europe, for example, they're talking more Eastern Europe, which there's obviously there's still stuff happening. The war between Russia and Ukraine has not been good for it's been a real challenge for a lot of those companies for very, very obvious reasons. So yeah, and never mind all the tariffs and everything else that's going on.
Yeah, exactly. But I'll say it again. And I said this a long time ago. If farmers in Saskatchewan and manufacturers could weld a cure for cancer, that they would do it, and they probably would be completely capable.
And it would be high quality and solid.
It would be high quality.
Be overbuilt.
Work.
Yep.
It'd be overbuilt. There'd be troubleshooting. It would be done well. Because I love that about our prairie farmers and manufacturers. They provide solutions for things. I love it.
The best innovations, are the ones that actually solve a problem.
That's
right.
To me, that's what innovation is. It doesn't have to be software or AI or whatever. Just solve a problem with something, with a new technique, a new piece of equipment, whatever. Just a new mindset. Just solve a problem for me.
Yeah,
that's what it is.
Mm-hmm. Okay, Tyler, who do you got in the Grey Cup?
Well, I'm a Quebecer, so I'm going to go Alouettes. But really, the big excitement on Sunday is the square dance competition at the Royal Winter Fair. So Wellington County, watch out. Shovel 4-H is coming for you.
Kelvin, are you a big square dancer?
Have you ever?
You're more of a polka kind of guy?
I've never square danced. I've maybe witnessed it a couple times.
I've witnessed it.
Shaun, that's a great point. Is square dancing and polka is that a Canadian Shield line? I feel like it is. I feel like polka is a Western.
Polka's on this side. Polka
that's what I mean. Polka is a Western Canadian, and square dancing is Eastern Canadian.
We've got some good German roots in this part of the country. We got polka at Oktoberfest and Ladysmith, just near where I am.
I don't know. It's the Polish with the polka. I got to tell you. Anyway, I think it's an East-West split because there's not a lot of square dancing in the West. There's some.
One of the biggest celebrities in polka is Molly B.
Oh my gosh. Here we go. Remember the Polka King? Do you guys remember that?
Yeah.
Anyway, okay.
Yeah.
Carrying on.
There's polka here on Rural Radio.
Yep.
I'm
telling you.
On the weekends.
But no square dancing, Tyler, so you need to
we got to bring it back. Wait and see how things go Sunday in Toronto. And,
okay, hey, we got to run here, everybody. If you have any feedback, send me an email. We'll end it right there. shaney@realagriculture.com, or you can call or text RealAg feedback line 855-776-6147. Big shout out to CANTERRA Seeds for being our sponsor today. Make sure you go to CANTERRA.com and you check out CS4100LL, which is CANTERRA Seeds' new Liberty Link canola hybrid, and the other canola hybrids that are in the portfolio, along with some of the cereals and pulse varieties as well. Thanks, everybody, for getting real and getting connected with RealAg Radio. We'll chat again next week. Cheers, everybody. So I said welcome to the bonus, everybody. I said, entertain me, Lyndsey. So what are you going to do to entertain me?
Well, we didn't talk about Pierre Poilievre, his leadership, and his MPs scurrying. And I mean, I'm being a little
Nova
bit silly.
Scotia MPs scurrying.
Right.
And Alberta. Alberta MPs.
Yeah. So we had one MP cross the floor, which I didn't Google it, but it's been a little while since we've had a floor crossing. So that's been kind of cool. Maybe Tyler, you remember when the last one was. I don't really remember. There have been some notable ones. This one maybe wasn't that notable. And then of course we've also got, Jenneru, I think it is, who has resigned in the spring sometime.
Yeah,
that one is
resign.
weird to me. Yeah, will resign. That just seems odd to me, but that's okay. Anyway, so and then in the follow up to all that, Poilievre has since taken questions from media, etc., and asking if he's going to sort of adjust his tact, and it was a resounding no. So yeah, make of that what you will. There's your entertainment.
You guys continue. There's somebody at the door in the Prime Minister's suite here. It actually may be the Prime Minister. So
it might be.
You continue this conversation. I'll be right back.
You go talk to Carney. Okay, Kelvin, what do you think?
Well, I think just like Carney often says one thing and what he actually does is very different. I think Poilievre in some ways, he has already, maybe it's just subconsciously, but to me he has already changed his tone a little bit. But he's maintaining the public image because that's what he thinks he needs to maintain support from the base heading into the leadership vote or his leadership review in January, and also to send the message to his caucus that it's my way or the highway, and I'm not going to take any of this freelance. Like, I think that there's an aspect of that too where he's trying to crack the whip there, and whether that's
Poilievre's been
in the long run. I don't know.
Poilievre's been the same for 20 years. I don't know why anybody would expect him to change now.
I don't think he's going to change. No,
that is what it is.
But I also, again, and we've talked about it on the show, that question of like liberals win elections. The conservatives have their principles and they have what they stand on, but the liberals tend to win elections. And this is one of those points where this one was so close that I guess my question to like Poilievre and his team is like, your base, where are they going? They're not going, well, except for maybe People's Party, but whatever. But like, they're not going anywhere. So why would you not at least attempt to bring some more people into the tent?
And again,
I
think the issue, Lyndsey, is that it's not the liberals that win elections; it's the conservatives that lose elections these days. And I just want to, before we lose it, talk quickly about beef prices and what's going on in the United States, because again, it boggles my mind that the U.S. administration seems to want to pick a fight with U.S. beef farmers, because if you look at the farm to wholesale spread, that's pretty tight these days. What keeps going up is the farmer share of beef prices. And so if Donald Trump wants to go to war with U.S. beef farmers, I just don't get it.
I think they've shifted. I don't think that was 2 weeks ago's news. Now we're on to the Packers.
But I think they're going to look at Packer margins and realize that there's no story there. It's the farmers that are making more money.
Yes. This has been the confusing thing. I've talked a lot doing U.S. media appearances on this, and I think the industry is kind of perplexed. The industry is very disappointed. There's a lot of rumors circulating about how this initially started in the first place. I'm not sure what is true or what is kind of being spread. But the reality is that my take has been, Secretary Rollins talks a lot about the this future golden age of agriculture, and that's great. It's in the it's for crop farmers, it's out in the distant. For ranchers, this is the golden age of agriculture.
It's now.
This is right now, and the administration, because similar to Canada, cost of living and expenses are one of the number one concerns. They've jumped to the narrative of trying to lower beef prices to try to protect the consumer. The reality is that is a major issue with the base, and you just can't fix it. The cattle, this is not a solvable solution in some sort of quick election cycle between now and the midterms, which realistically the Republicans look like they're going to lose the House. But Lyndsey, go ahead.
Maybe Trump thinks you could just bring cattle factories to the U.S. Is that the narrative? But there are. Do you know what I mean? Like I know, but like it just feels like it's one of those. There isn't a simple solution like that. It isn't something that you can just create a new factory for and throw money at it and you'll bring that. And it really does. It is a head scratcher. I don't understand. So it would be lovely to know how this came about as to who ticked off the president to make him go after the beef industry. I don't get it.
And I think that there are some people trying to call for similar investigations in Canada, and I think that anybody that's calling for that today just shows how little they know about how the food system works.
Yeah, there's lots of reasons to be concerned about the consolidation of the packing industry in the U.S. and in Canada. In this case, what are packers colluding to do? Lose money? Their margins are in the negative. They're colluding to pay the rancher more than they want to. There's just a lot here that doesn't make sense when you actually just provide some sort of like elementary investigation and looking into it, or talk to a few cowboys that you may know. The reality is I think this is, again, sort of like Canada's capital projects. It's a little bit of stakeholder management and communications, and not a lot of real policy that's going to come from it whatsoever. What they can do is deal with, try to fix the screwworm situation. That's something the government can do, and it would be, and they are working on it, but that would be of assistance to the supply concerns that are out there. But there's no quick fixes there either.
And they're talking about reducing tariffs and importing more from other countries to not just on beef, but on other food products too, where the prices are deemed too high. And again, it's so much hypocrisy everywhere when it comes to this, because tariffs apparently don't raise prices, but yet when you lower tariffs, then it's supposed to come down. Prices. And even if tariffs don't raise prices, we still talk about sending out $2,000 tariff rebate checks. So it's still, I don't know. It's just hypocrisy all around. And a lot of this, the same things came from the Biden administration when it came to protectionism around the beef industry as well. So that's where we're at a full circle moment here, where some of the MAGA movement is meeting up with the Bernie Sanders wing of the Democrat Party.
Yeah, which we kind of always have known, right? There are a lot of things that, like, for example, the RCAF, for example, is asking for is not too far from what Elizabeth Warren would be asking for. And probably not a lot of people from RCAF, involved in an organization like RCAF would say, hey, I'm a Elizabeth Warren supporter. But in issues like this, they're
aligned.
They're aligned. Yeah. Exactly. It's no slow times around these parts. There was also concern this week where a Chinese delegate wouldn't confirm that they'd actually agreed to the soybean purchases. Like that seems to have been on shaky footing this week already, and the soybean future has really rallied in the last 2 weeks, over 10% in the last 2 weeks. We're trying to drag canola with it, but it's been a little bit unsuccessful.
The official Chinese documents, though, have no mention of it.
They don't. Far. No, still waiting. That is not solved tomorrow either. This is,
we can't rush these things.
It's going to, and that's the way China plays. But
yeah, exactly.
Chinese ambassador, by the way, met with pork and canola people in Winnipeg this week. Cam Dahl met with the Chinese ambassador to Canada.
Cool.
So continues to be a warming up of relations between Canada and China. Yes. And we also had the trade minister in India this week. So the Canada-India front also continues to warm up despite
those tariffs.
Major issues there too.
Yeah.
And our foreign affairs minister talked to her counterpart as well this week in China. Right. So again, all of those things are really good news. Again, that is one of those, like, there's not going to be some magic kind of thing change overnight, but lots of engagement kind of bit by bit will make a difference in that relationship.
I think and when we talked to Neil Townsend from Grain Fox earlier this week, I just think the biggest concern is not, we're not focused on the wrong. We're focused on some of the wrong factors. Like, I think there should be legitimate concern about what actual Chinese demand is in some of these commodities.
Yes,
which affords them the ability to apply these tariffs, because they don't need the product. Right. There's talk of China having a surplus now of soybeans. But they've been pulling out of South America, and probably won't even need potentially as even if they did agree to these numbers, they don't really need those soybeans, which is why some people have floated the idea that what they've been doing is trying to buy the soybean future to count towards the purchase, which is that is BS. That can't be one of the qualifiers. That's bad. If that's what we agreed to, that's bad negotiating period. So yeah, it's, I think this idea, and I said this to the audience in Cyprus yesterday, we got to stop talking about whether it's Canadian canola or American soybeans or any of the commodities that go to China. We have to stop talking about China like at some point they were some sort of consistent, stable, loyal buyer of our commodities. It hasn't been the case. And I don't know why we're talking about it that way.
But we also can't shape our industry to ignore China and just say we want to sell to them either. So
absolutely not. But when they're ready to buy, do as much business as you possibly can, but don't make your plans for the future based based on what
that.
they are going to do or not do, because I think they're just not that.
And Townsend's point, I think, is like bang on of like, we have to have an outlook on what they're going to demand, and realistically, there isn't great transparency, but indications are that it will be less, not more. And so that's where we have to make that call.
Hey, this has been fun. I got to get on the stage. I got to be on the stage in like 40 minutes. So I got to run. This has been a lot of fun. Really appreciate it. And everybody have themselves a great weekend. And we'll chat again next week. Cheers, everybody.